Is Lucasfilm going back to the original George Lucas scripts for the sequel trilogy that were discarded and thrown away by Kathleen Kennedy? Well, that's what some reports are now saying, and it all has to do with a villain returning to Star Wars. It's Darth Talon. And what does that say for Disney? Hello, folks. It's a great day. It's a good day every time you come our way. We're so happy to see you. Welcome back to the Pro Channel, where we explain entertainment and keep you ahead of the culture curve as we learn together. Consider clicking the like button, drop a comment down below, and we're betting on you that we can earn a subscription from you if we just keep working each day to do so. All right, folks, Darth Talon. Lauren Connor's here. He's going to tell us who that is and why it matters. Have we uncovered the continued untangling of Kathleen Kennedy? Well, it's looking like more of the sequel trilogy is being put to rest, at least Kathleen Kennedy's efforts, definitely done at Star Wars and Lucasfilm. This out of Collider. Star Wars' newest series quietly confirms Lucasfilm is finally reviving George Lucas' original sequel plan. Whew, that's a lot of a title. Hannah Hunt has this one. You know, these things are in contradiction with one another, right? The Kathleen Kennedy vision for the sequel trilogy and George Lucas vision for the sequel trilogy, they're not the same. And we have been reporting now for quite a while, Lauren could tell you how long it's been, that Kathleen Kennedy largely was not running Lucasfilm. And I've been telling you that Alan Bergman, I believe even to this day now, is sort of running Lucasfilm, no matter what they say about Filoni and the other one, Bergman. Excuse me, Alan Bergman, I think, is running it. Started to say Lin-Manuel Brennan, but Alan Bergman is basically running Lucasfilm. That's what I'm hearing. And so even if you talk about gestation period of getting this thing ready to go, this show that's out now, this Darth Maul thing, I think Kathy is, the sequel trilogy idea is done. Here's the article. For more than a decade, one of the most persistent what-ifs in modern Star Wars history has been George Lucas's abandoned plan for the sequel trilogy. When Lucas sold Lucasfilm to Disney in 2012, he already had concepts for the episodes 7, 8, 9. While fragments of those ideas surfaced in the years that followed, the trilogy that ultimately emerged bore little resemblance to Lucas's original vision, particularly when it came to its villains. Now, with Star Wars Maul Shadow Lord set to release, Lucasfilm appears to be revisiting that discarded roadmap in a meaningful way. The series quietly resurrects one of the central pillars of Lucas's sequel-era mythology by extending the story of Darth Maul, suggesting that the franchise may be finally circling back. But here's what it's really about, folks. I'm just going to skip a lot of this because there's a lot of fluff here. Darth Talon. Lauren, we've talked about Darth Talon going way back to when you first came on the channel. And we were hearing that this was something that was being pushed even at Disney and by the toy manufacturers, saying, hey, we talked to George about this. Where's Darth Talon? We're supposed to have Darth Talon. Darth Talon is a femme fatale, right, Lauren? A femme fatale kind of character. Very sensuous. Can we say that? Is that
that's a good way to put it? Yep.
Audacious. And George, well, we all remember him putting Princess Leia in the bikini. George likes that sort of thing. I'm not saying anything about it, but he wanted Darth Talon, I suppose, to be the main baddie of the sequel trilogy. And Kathy said no. Well, and we didn't really have a baddie. I don't know who the bad guy is in the sequel, except Palpatine shows up at the end somehow.
Something titillating is what George was looking for.
Yeah. And Darth Talon is that.
Yeah. And I mean, there have been plenty of opportunities. I think we're going to get a hint of restoration in this terrible animation series that's about to come out, this Maul series. But that's just my opinion. I think you're going to get the introduction to some characters that could carry the future. The one character that clearly can't is Rey. I think they're going to have to find a way to pivot to something else entirely different, if not just like try to erase everybody's memory from the sequel trilogy, which I think is what's happening at the parks right now.
Sure. Now, Darth Talon, Lauren, help me understand this. Darth Talon is basically a Harley Quinn Star Wars character, kind of more dangerous, I would say. But George wanted apparently this to be the character, the villain. Now we're getting Darth Talon finally. Kathleen's gone. And when Kathleen's gone, suddenly we get Darth Talon. But the thing is, Lauren, why this is interesting, it goes beyond just, oh, well, we got a George Lucas character finally. There's only one way you can portray this character and fans will care versus mock you. So if they're actually going to go and start using Darth Talon, then they have to go to the version that people want, which is a very sexually charged, psychopathic kind of character Lauren, is that what they're going to do? Or do you believe this is yet again going to be an example of Lucasfilm really screwing up with a character?
Yeah, it's not good. It's Darth Talon in name only. Darth Talon was from the Legacy comic books, which took place more than 100 years past Return of the Jedi. There was a moment when there was a game publisher that was planning to do a Darth Maul game, and Lucas had become aware of the Darth Talon character through some artwork and kind of became almost obsessed with the character, and he really wanted to put Maul and Talon together. And he insisted to the game developer that this Darth Talon character become Maul's sidekick / apprentice. And that kind of made them pucker a little bit because they were already well into game development, and they also knew from the lore that the timeline was all wrong. But Lucas isn't a guy who really cares about what other people do with the property. He just liked the character design and always has, and it's stuck in his head. That game never did get developed. It never did get published. The deal fell through, but the character stuck in George's mind, and eventually he did put that into the story treatments that were for his intended sequel trilogy with her paired up with Maul. What's going to happen in this new series, the animated series, is not going to be the story from his intended script treatments. It's not going to be the thing from the game because, again, the timeline is all wrong. This is taking place likely post Rebels, but pre A New Hope. It's not going to be in the right time. No, not post Rebels. It can't be post Rebels because Maul is still alive. So it's actually post Clone Wars, pre Rebels.
But is the inclusion of the character itself, because the character is feminine and highly charged in ways that Kathleen Kennedy seems to not believe in, is just a very... Okay, so you think they're going to retcon this character to be completely different and lacking in that, femme fatale?
Yeah, by definition. You got to understand how long it takes to make one of these animated series. This thing has been in development for at least 2 or 3 years, and that means that it's still going to be under Kathleen, and Dave, frankly, shares a lot of her sensibilities. So it's not going to be the sexpot character that we're used to from the comics and other media.
Would that have been the way to have gone with the sequel trilogy? Do you wish that had been... I mean, I know the sequel trilogy we got was terrible, but was that the way to do it, Lauren, to have Darth Talon as previously envisioned?
No, not in my opinion. I think what George's intention for the sequel trilogy was to dive deeper into Force lore. I think that's where he was going. I think that's actually why Iger and others got really nervous, because I think he was going to be delving more into the mysticism side of the Force, and that was going to touch on midichlorians and the wills and other stuff. And so I think they got real cold feet about that. I think that's why they shelved the script treatments.
You think that neither was good? You think George Lucas's sequel trilogy probably wouldn't have worked, and the one that we got definitely didn't work?
I'm not saying George's wouldn't have, but I think that it would have appealed to a smaller audience. I think there are people who would have totally dug into it. But I think there's a lot of people that would have said this was the prequels on steroids. And if you didn't like the prequels, it's unlikely you would have liked this, because they would have seen it as demystifying more something that was originally mystical and awfully vague.
Well, I think it would have had to dive more deeply into the religious aspects that he was exploring with the wills and the midichlorians and things like that. And blending them with some sort of supernatural / space gods. I think there would have been some problems there.
Yeah, and that's why I think as a concept, I think it would have been really interesting. I don't think that it would have worked cinematically. Honestly, what I thought they should have done with the script treatments that George produced is, way back when Dark Horse Comics did a series that was called The Star Wars, and it was a comic book version of his first draft of A New Hope, and it's a completely different script, a completely different movie, really, but they had gorgeous artwork that was kind of in the style of McQuarrie stuff, and it's a fun read, and I think that something like that is what should have been done with Lucas's script treatments. The downside, though, is that I think Kathleen kind of fibbed a little bit in one of her interviews when she said, well, we don't have scripts. And that was true. They didn't have scripts. They had a story treatment, which is usually not very long. It's an outline. I'm not sure if George provided them with enough material that you could actually get something like that comic adaptation that we're talking about, because there wasn't a script. So she was trying to downplay what George gave to them. She was telling a technical truth while not being wholly honest about what they had.
Ron, what do you think about the idea that there really isn't anything sexy or alluring or anything like that in Star Wars? There's nothing really, traditionally feminine in that way. Maybe Darth Talon is a character that Lucasfilm going forward. I know what is said about Dave Filoni, but if Disney's in charge, if Bergman's in charge, they don't care. They just want something that sells. Maybe girl boss villain is the way. I don't know.
I mean, they had Asajj Ventress. They've got very interesting female characters in the Star Wars lore, and bringing more of those forward and making them feminine. I've talked to a lot of women about this. Women also like feminine characters. They don't really like. How do I say this? The butching up of female characters. Rey, she never really came across as that feminine, which I think kind of made it that kiss at the end of Rise of Palpatine? Was that Rise of Skywalker? That awkward kiss between her and Kylo Ren. It never really felt earned. It never felt genuine. It was very awkward because she never felt that feminine of a character. And you want, like, for the last decade, it seems like all of Hollywood has been trying to, in a very general way, throw out femininity for women and throw out masculinity for men. But it's been shown that audiences don't like it. It doesn't really work. Bringing some of this stuff back, I think, would be great, just generally for the storytelling aspect of it. Plus, going forward without Kennedy, I think there are a number of things that they can do. I think they've already kind of maybe started the idea of with the parks over at Disneyland, and seeing some of these better female characters in the parks would be great. I mean, there's just honestly, there's just so much that could be done. I do see Star Wars as a property that could be revived, but right now, even I myself, I don't really have an interest in anything Star Wars at the moment, and I would like to again. I would very much like to.
Yeah. So go ahead, Lauren. But as you do, let me point you to this. There's an article up on the screen. It's from TV Line. George Lucas's canceled Star Wars series could have completely changed the franchise. You'll already know about this. Apparently, there was a grown-up, maybe 60 scripts for a TV show that was more mature from George Lucas. A lot of this, maybe Lauren, as we go forward, maybe it's time to go back to what George Lucas had given Disney years ago.
Oh man, this show, please expound upon it, Lauren, because this show was groundbreaking for what they wanted to do.
Well, yes, but there actually is leaked footage of what was their internal pilot to test the technology. It's rough. Now, bear in mind, this was test footage, so it's not intended to be like a final. I am certain that the people that were in it were not professional actors. I'll put it that way. I would like to know what was in those scripts. I think it likely was groundbreaking, but I think they shelved it for the right reason. The technology was not there at the time. They couldn't do what they now can, and certainly not at the price point that they needed it to. One of the things that I was going to say is Marv and I were talking on the pre-show a little bit about something that I was thinking about yesterday, which is that a large part of Disney's problem is that they just don't know how to handle the Jedi. They seem to misunderstand them as superhero characters, and they want to keep giving them additional powers that didn't exist because they think you need new powers for each movie, and they think of them as being overpowered like a comic book character, when in actuality, the Force doesn't really make you super powerful. It gives you a slight edge. And in some cases, some of the powers that are associated with it are actually a detriment. One of the things that I notice is that for the Disney content that has been produced, when they are not doing the Jedi, and specifically the Dark Times content, most of the Dark Times content between Revenge of the Sith and A New Hope is actually pretty good. You've got the stuff that I was thinking about specifically was Solo. If you take L3 out of it, really, there's not much wrong with Solo. Solo's not a bad movie. You've got Rogue One, you've got Andor, you've got Jedi Fallen Order, and you've got Jedi Survivor. Now, that's the exception to the Jedi rule, but it works because it wasn't Lucasfilm producing it. It was Respawn Entertainment. If you take those stories all together and deal with the post-Clone Wars period, they actually get Star Wars pretty well. They understand the galaxy becomes a pretty dark place without the Jedi, and they explore that in interesting ways. It's when they start introducing the Jedi, that's where they go all awry, and they just do not know how to handle them.
All right. Well, folks, we'll keep an eye on this. If we find out that Darth Talon is actually going to be part of whatever they do with Star Wars going forward, and if it's a semi-sexy sort of character, well, look out, because that likely means that things have moved to Burbank for who's in charge of Star Wars. And put another one in the can, folks. A video of excellence has been birthed into existence, and you were there to witness it. Thank you for participating. We hope you had a good time. Folks, it's a great time anytime we get to share time with you, and we mean it. The only thing additional we ask, on the way out the door, consider clicking the like button. Share, subscribe, click it and stick it to those pesky algorithms. It is the notification bell. Drop a comment down below. And oh, by the way, if you would be so kind, perhaps share this out on your favorite social media platforms. Folks, we've got all kinds of content coming your way. If you are interested in going even beyond all of that, well, there's a Pro Store, and you can always find those items directly below the video you're watching. The Pro Store, it's a cool place to check out for items that, well, definitely Disney and the rest are not going to sell you, but we're happy to do so. Until the next time, keep learning, keep growing, and as always, keep having fun.